Hi there, I'm Mike, and what I have for you today is the history of vehicles in the Black Series. So about halfway through the year, I made it a goal of doing a video on every Black Series figure that I got this year. And the only ones that I have left to do are two vehicles, of which this is one, and then also this holocron Darth Vader. So I figured it's best to just combine the vehicles together into one video and then probably ignore this Darth Vader. I also realized that I could use my stupid brain that remembers pointless information that's absolutely useful to nobody and talk about how we got here and what these two vehicles mean. In my opinion, to properly look at these videos, you have to put them into context with the rest of the line. First, we have to go all the way back to where the Black Series started in 2013. Then we have to skip ahead a year because there were no vehicles in 2013, despite what Action Figure 411 would have you believe. It is sometimes wrong, and in this case, it's wrong. So in 2014, we got the speeder bike, and we know that it came out in 2014 because the packaging, it is Phase 2. It's the blue line packaging. It was well received and popular, but it did tend to shelf warm a bit towards the end of its shelf life, along with its release mate of Jabba the Hutt. Both of these retailed for $40, which would be around $54 in 2024 dollars. I consider the speeder bike to be a perfect size vehicle for the line. It's not overly large, it doesn't take up much room, and it's affordable. It came with a Biker Scout, the same mold that we still see in the line to this day, almost 12 years later. And he came with a tiny, very losable blaster. Jabba came with nothing, and he's not a vehicle. Not if Jabba has anything to say about it anyways. Now keep in mind that these were released around a year into the line, and the line itself hadn't even come close to hitting its peak, so any low sales could be attributed to its newness. In fact, at the time, you could pick up most of the 2013 and 14 waves of figures, both the orange line and blue line, for around half their retail price. I myself picked up holes from the first few waves and picked up peg warmers like X-Wing Luke, Boba Fett, Starship Leia, and Greedo for around $10 a piece. So you know, the line was dead. Jumping ahead to 2015, we got a black repaint of the speeder bike as part of the Imperial Shadow Squadron set. It was exclusive to Target and retailed for $50, which, considering that it was only $10 more than the regular speeder bike, it was a cooler color and came with a whole extra figure. It was a great deal, if you could find one on shelves, that is. I only saw the set once, and that was the set that I bought. Also in 2015, we had two sort of vehicle release sets with both the Tauntaun with Hoth Han, along with Hoth Luke and his Wampa. But the Wampa, not a vehicle. Not if the Wampa has anything to say about it anyways. Both sets also retail for $40, which firmly established this as the vehicle price for the 6-inch Black Series line. Of course, vehicle or vehicle adjacent. Vehicle being, if you can ride it, it's a vehicle. I mean, the Tauntaun's not a machine, but you can ride it. But not the Wampa. Although I did get both of these sets for way cheaper very soon after their release on Amazon. So you know, the line was dead. Then, also in 2015, we got that TIE Fighter. That TIE Fighter. 2015 saw the resurgence of Star Wars in the mainstream with the release of The Force Awakens, the first new Star Wars movie since 2005. Or I guess 2008 if you want to count the Clone Wars movie, but do we count that? It was basically a theatrical release of a TV show pilot. Suddenly, Star Wars was everywhere, and the Black Series was finally starting to get popular. And now we had a TIE fighter. Retailing for $170 and absolutely dominating large pockets of retail space in stores, along with large sections of collectors' shelves, the TIE Fighter was anything but a success. When it was first shown off, the people who watched the reveal seemed to be wowed by the sheer size of this thing. The thought at the time of having something this large in a 6-inch toy line was absolutely bonkers. And while it's way more common now, back then it was unheard of. But it was quickly apparent that these things were not flying off the shelves. Whether it was because of the size, the price, or the reluctance of collectors to adopt the sequels, or some combination of everything, the TIE Fighters just were not selling. And if your immediate reaction is to say, oh, it was the sequels, put a pin in it, we'll get to it. But in 2015, $170 is about $226 in 2024 dollars, which was a lot for collectors back then, keeping in mind that we really hadn't seen large ticket items like this before. I would say that the line was dead, but genuinely, aside from that TIE Fighter, the figures were selling out fast, and the hype for The Force Awakens and new Star Wars movies was real. Like I said, we just hadn't seen large ticket items and high cost items like that as a collecting community before. I mean, HasLab was still not a thing for another 4 years. I really think collectors just weren't ready for the sheer size and cost, and those were the big reasons that we saw this set go on deep discount, although I won't deny that had this been an OT TIE Fighter, it might have sold better. After that, we got a bit of a break, around a 2-year break. And keep in mind that at this time, the line was only 4 or 5 years old. 2 years was a relatively long time to go without any kind of vehicle set, almost half of its existence. Long enough to think that maybe the severe lack of interest in the TIE Fighter killed all chance for more vehicles in the line. Then in 2017, seemingly out of nowhere, we got 2 more vehicles announced for release during the Force Friday that year for the movie The Last Jedi. We got Rey's Speeder and Luke's Land Speeder. Also, Luke's Land Speeder would see a San Diego Comic-Con release with a better paint job, I guess, and like a bigger packaging. I think that was pretty much the only difference that I've seen, but I've never really handled that, so I don't know. Both the retail versions of these releases were packaged with their respective characters, of course, and they retailed for $60 a piece, which was $20 more than the previous vehicle releases that we had seen in the line, sort of making this the first price hike in the line, kind of. Although they're bigger vehicles than what we had before, arguably. And again, they did not sell well. Sitting on store shelves, going on clearance down to $40 and sometimes even less. Another apparent disappointment for Star Wars fans, despite one of these being about as classic as you can get in terms of appeal for most Star Wars fans. In 2017, we got one more vehicle-ish release with the Sand Trooper and Dewback. And unlike the previous 2, this one was more well received by all accounts. While it did still hit sales and online clearance, in my experience, I didn't really see them sitting on shelves long enough to be considered shelf warming. It was mostly places like Amazon or GameStop that would put these on discount. Also, this set held a high aftermarket price after it left retail. Then, a year later in 2018, we got our final vehicle release for another extended period of time with Enfys Nest and her speeder from the movie Solo. After the lack of sales with the Luke and Rey speeder and the negative reception to Solo after a very divisive release of The Last Jedi, it seemed like these larger vehicles were just doomed again. Enfys Nest was released with almost no fanfare, and stores like Amazon were putting her on sale and discount almost immediately. Despite the fact that the vehicle itself is pretty cool. It's really big, and it has a very unique character that came with it, one that wasn't released any other way in the line. So there really didn't seem to be any reason for Hasbro to put out more if no one was buying them. It became a well-known running joke at this time amongst Black Series collectors that you could wait for a month or two on any vehicle and pick them up for half price or less. Does that sound familiar? Ross? Ollie's?
The line was dead.
Up until now, the only vehicle set that really sold well was the dewback, and it still wasn't flying off the shelves the way regular figures were at the time. It seemed like Black Series collectors in general just didn't care about larger vehicle releases, at least the way that 3.75-inch figure collectors did. And with their larger size and higher cost, when these sets shelf-warmed, it was noticeable. I mean, it's not like no one was buying these. I certainly did. Here's a picture of me with that TIE fighter on Christmas morning in 2015 that my girlfriend at the time, now wife, paid full price to get me. I was and still am in on vehicles, but I'm not a monolith and I'm not every collector. And sales show that collectors just aren't interested in vehicle sets. At least not at full price. Not when they feel they could wait and get a deal on it. Because people don't want to feel like they're paying too much for something. And I think that is the kicker. Are the vehicle selections not interesting? Did the TIE Fighter clearance set a bad precedent for future vehicle releases right off the bat? I don't know the answer to these. There's so much information that I don't have. I'm not an insider. I don't know all the behind the scenes sales. All I know is my own personal recollections of having lived through these times and actively collected and paid attention and documented, because my brain is stupid that way. But I know that it's not just one thing. It was a combination of all the things. So again, like I said, we had another period in the line with no vehicles, another 2-year period. From 2018 to 2020, the line got real popular with the wild popularity of The Mandalorian and the focus on Clone Wars characters and the pandemic causing a collector bubble to form. This was the most popular that the Black Series line had ever been. So I guess at some point Hasbro thought, why not try again? I mean, I guess they thought that. Again, I don't work for Hasbro. I don't know what they're thinking. But for the 40th anniversary of Empire Strikes Back, Hasbro announced that their second large vehicle set would be released in the line, the Snowspeeder. And in my opinion, this was a good choice. It was large, but not too large. It was pricey, but not too pricey. And it was right in that sweet spot of being in that collector bubble that had formed in the pandemic and celebrating the 40th anniversary of my favorite Star Wars movie and the best Star Wars movie, Empire Strikes Back. The Snowspeeder retailed for $120, which was $50 less than the TIE Fighter from 5 years earlier. And it wasn't a shelf-dwarfing size. It also came with a figure not often seen in any action figure line. Dak Ralter. You know, that guy. And still, it seemed like collectors just did not want to show up for the set. It never really sold out, despite often going on sale. Back in 2022, I had a conversation with Eric from the Hasbro Black Series team, and he mentioned that the Snowspeeder just did not hit the numbers that they wanted, and he didn't know if there were going to be any future vehicles in the line because of it. It wasn't the last nail in the coffin, but it was one of them. No, the real last nail in the coffin was, of course, the Rancor. I couldn't not talk about the Rancor, the biggest thing to ever be in the Black Series line. The first Black Series, and if you ask me, the only Black Series HasLab campaign. It ran during the Christmas season of 2021 against 2 other simultaneously running HasLab campaigns, and it very nearly almost funded. But it didn't. Another vehicle failed. Although, of course, the Rancor isn't a vehicle. Not if he has anything to say about it. Except for that one time he was. So after the failure of the Rancor, it was clear that we weren't going to be seeing any more vehicles in the line for a long time. At this point, interest in the line was slipping. Prices had been raised a few times over the last few years here, causing the perception of value of the line to go down. And despite getting a lot of new sculpts in the line, it was feeling diluted with a constant barrage of repaints and reissues that made it easy to forget that we were also getting new stuff. That, and of course, the collector bubble was bursting, shipping was taking forever, everything was getting delayed, the world was falling apart, and we didn't really have any hope for anything for almost 3 years. Hi there. Editing Mike here. I knew I was missing something, and when I was editing, I went over to my shelves and saw 2 more speeder bikes that I missed. I realized I forgot them because they both came out in 2020, which was basically a void year, so I don't blame myself for forgetting it at all, but I did. The first was from the set The Heroes of Endor, which was a PulseCon exclusive in 2020, which is like the first major, at the time, convention they had, because all the conventions had closed, so they consolidated all the conventions they would have been at into one place for exclusive. So it was a big year. This was also the first time we were seeing a lot of popular main characters in their Endor outfit. Endor Han, Endor Luke, Endor Leia. It was also the first and for a while only time to get Poplu, and of course he came with the speeder bike. Now the speeder bike was largely the exact same as the original release, but this time it came with a different stand because honestly that original stand kind of sucks. I own this. I have not opened it yet. The next set was the Amazon exclusive re-release of the speeder bike, but this time it was based on the Mandalorian. So the speeder bike is white now, and the biker scout is super dirty and decrepit to represent the on-screen look from the Mandalorian. It also came with a bag with Grogu's head on it, and that little power converter thing. I don't know what it was, the target practice thing that he kept missing. So it came with that. Now, just because I forgot these, it doesn't actually change anything about my video. However, both of these did actually sell pretty well, which seems to go against what I've been saying in my video. But I attribute this to a few different things that were unique for the time. First, 2020 was right at the height of the collecting bubble. A lot of people were stuck at home indoors at the time, and they were looking for something new to do, and a lot of people chose collecting Black Series figure as a hobby to fill that void and that hole. The Heroes of Endor set was priced at $110 and actually sold out pretty quickly after it became available on Pulse. Now, I mostly attribute its popularity because honestly, it's a cool box, and it was the first time we got the Endor versions of main characters, like I said. But despite selling it out, they put it back up for pre-order, like they were doing a second run. And when that came in stock, I don't think it sold out for quite some time. In fact, I'm pretty sure it went on sale quite a bit. Now, the Mandalorian speeder bike on Amazon is a different story. That retailed for $50, and people were buying anything Mandalorian related at the time. I feel like a lot of people have forgotten how absolutely popular the Mandalorian was when it came out. People were hungry for Mando merch. They wanted anything with Baby Yoda on it or in it. The Mandalorian brought a lot of new people to Star Wars in general, and a lot of people started collecting because of the Mandalorian. So this was super popular when you compound everything together. However, once this sold out, I don't really think it ever came back in stock, and I think that was also part of the problem. There wasn't really a restock. Like I said, I don't really think this changes anything about my video, but these are 2 very interesting outliers from a unique period of collecting in the line, and I wanted to make sure that they got included. Then I also remembered that there's that one figure of C-3PO riding Chewbacca, and is that a vehicle? Not if Chewie has anything to say about it. Anyways, that's more of a deluxe figure, and I thought about it. If you want to see me do a video like this, but for deluxe releases, let me know. I probably will sometime next year, but let me know in the comments if you want to see that. Anyways, back to the rest of the video. So here we are. 2024 is the current year as of the writing of this script and recording of this video, just in case I don't get it out on time. We're about to head into a new year, and as people are racking their brains, trying to figure out top 10s of the past year, I'm sitting here trying to figure out what it is about Hasbro and these Black Series vehicles that just don't resonate with Black Series collectors or the community as a whole. Because this year we got not one, but two new vehicle releases. And unlike other vehicles released this time, they're based on the prequels. In the 11 years the line has existed to this point, the prequels have gone from the red-headed stepchild of Star Wars to the special little boy that could do no wrong. Every year, it seems like the prequels gain more and more love as time has softened the harsher critiques the movies had when they came out. And listen, I was there. To say these movies were divisive is underselling it. But that's not the point of the video, and I won't argue it. Like I said, we got two vehicles released this year, and they were popular vehicles from increasingly popular movies, directly referencing popular toys from 1999, both as toys and in the boxes referencing those toys' releases. They're trying to hit us directly in the nostalgia. Although the Sith Speeder one was only based on the 12-inch figure, and I never really cared for that. I didn't have it, but I still understood the reference. At San Diego Comic-Con, we saw the release of Darth Maul and his Sith Speeder, or, if you want to be cool, his Bloodfin. Seen in The Phantom Menace, the Sith Speeder was used by Darth Maul on Tatooine as his favorite means of conveyance in all two scenes that we saw it in. And not to be outdone, his Bloodfin Sith Speeder comes packaged with a newly sculpted Darth Maul that came out just this year. This is actually one of the 3 times that this Darth Maul would be released this year. And while I wanted a brand new Darth Maul for some time in this line, even I'll admit that releasing it 3 times in such a short amount of time is icky. What the just happened? Did you see that? Monkey King just committed suicide back there. So the first Darth Maul was part of the first wave of Black Series figures ever released back in 2013. In fact, it was the very first Black Series figure that I ever bought. And over the last decade, we've seen this mold get re-released and reused many times. To say this figure, especially these legs, have aged poorly is an understatement. The legs just can't stand straight. The feet are bowed like they're rockers, and it just doesn't pose the way I want it to, and it's very prone to falling over. In fact, Darth Nihilus lost his saber because he's 90% Darth Maul, and those feet would make him fail any sobriety test. Me too. We were way overdue for a brand new Darth Maul from The Phantom Menace. On May the 4th, Hasbro showed us the Duel of the Fates 3-pack, which reissued Qui-Gon, Padawan Obi-Wan, now with fancy robes that should have come with in the first place, and debuting the brand new Darth Maul. That's actually how we first saw him. And he came with a robe too, which was great. I didn't get this pack. Then, shortly after, we got the announcement of the Sith Speeder set, and Darth Maul is largely the same as the one from the 3-pack. Same body, same legs, same cloak, but now he has a soft goods skirt, which makes for sitting down better, which is important because sitting down is one of the things that you would do on a speeder. On top of that, he comes with a few accessories that the 3-pack didn't, like his binoculars, a Sith probe, which is the same as a regular probe droid, but like Sithy, a bracelet that's not only fashionable, but controls the Sith probe, and of course, the Bloodfin Sith Speeder. Then we got that Maul released a 3rd time this year as part of the standalone wide release. This one is the same as the one from the Duel of the Fates 3-pack, but doesn't come with a robe. His only accessory is the one accessory that's shared between all of these releases, and that is that classic double-bladed lightsaber. So you have 3 choices, already a lot of choices for one figure in just a few months' time. It brought this from being a sought-after release with a much-needed update to a confusing choice that has people feeling unsatisfied no matter which one they choose, if they only choose one. That's the figure. That's Darth Maul. He's great. But this is a vehicle video. It's about vehicles. So I suppose that we should talk about the Bloodfin. And I think it's pretty good. It's the classic crescent shape. It has lots of molded lines and details over the hull. There is some weathering, but it's not the best weathering. It mostly just looks like smudges. It has a cushy looking seat molded onto the vehicle with a nice headrest for those long desert night rides. Or when you want to mow down kids for absolutely no reason. Darth Maul didn't know who this was when he almost ran over Anakin Skywalker. He's got some rests for his feet, he's got movable handlebars, and a small control console molded and painted between those handlebars. And like all the other hovering vehicles, it sits on a translucent stand on a ball joint, allowing it to be tilted for posing, and it's a unique stand that we haven't seen before. Also, the probe droid has a nice stand that I didn't mention. And as far as I can tell, the vehicle is the right size. There aren't a lot of scenes in the movie to compare the size with, but if you watch them, it feels right to me. I guess the problem is that this is a $60 set, which, to be honest, I was surprised that it wasn't more expensive. This was produced as a convention exclusive, which are always done in lower quantities, which means that usually there are more expensive releases just because they're convention exclusives. That's the convention tax. But for $60, I feel like we're getting about the same amount of toy we got with the $60 vehicles released previously. The Bloodfin may be a bit smaller than, say, the Land Speeder or especially Enfys Nest speeder bike, but this came with a unique version of a new figure and a surprising amount of accessories. No, I don't think that the price was the problem, or at least it shouldn't have been. But for the price, I think a lot of fans are expecting movie-accurate coloring. And I'll be honest here, even though I am colorblind, even I can tell the coloring is weird. It's too light to be movie-accurate, but it's also too dark to be based off the original toy. So as someone who didn't go to San Diego Comic-Con, but I had friends that did, I'm pretty sure that the Sith Speeder didn't sell out any of the days of the convention. No, the golden boy there this year was the Once a Man Cobra Commander. That thing sold out like instantly. And for those of us that didn't go to the convention, it was later, very shortly after, put up on Hasbro Pulse. And I do think it sold out that first or second day, but they put it back up like a day or two later when they allocated more. So like, and it didn't really sell out, you know, it's still there. You can still go buy it. They even put it up on Big Bad Toy Store, although it did sell out there as of the recording of this video. So the question I have is, did Hasbro just produce a lot of these with the expectation that it'd be super popular and they wouldn't want to run out? Or are people just not showing up for this also? I don't think it's the price. I think for what you get, the price is fine. If you break it down, it's $25 for the figure and $35 for the Sith Speeder. And that seems reasonable to me based on what you get. It could also be having it be exclusive to the convention and then exclusive to Pulse that's sort of keeping it back. Both of these are pretty restrictive. San Diego Comic-Con required a pass to get in and buy, and then Pulse has shipping unless you're a sucker like me and pay for premium. But for whatever reason, I expected this to be a much more popular release than it turned out to be. I've seen some complaints about the paint deco, the size, the cost, the value, and while I do think there's some merit to some of them, I don't agree on all of them. This is a set that I am super happy exists. Could it be better? Of course. I don't think Hasbro's really ever had a release that couldn't be better. But I feel like people don't buy stuff on principle sometimes because they're trying to send Hasbro a message. The problem with that is that Hasbro can and will always take away the wrong message. The message is that we want Hasbro to do better. But the message that Hasbro gets is that people don't want to buy this. They just don't want it. Not that they want it, but are protesting, but they just don't want it for whatever reason. That's the takeaway for Hasbro. And that is why I will, if I can, always buy these vehicles as soon as possible to support the line, because I want more, and I'm hoping that by supporting it, the next one will be better. That's one of the reasons why I'm making this video. And I talk about this a lot on my podcast. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do that or that you're a bad person if you don't do that. I'm just saying for me, this is my mentality when I'm looking at supporting a line that I like. But that's enough about the Bloodfin and Darth Maul. We got 2 figures this year, and I don't want to drone on about that. Let's take a look at the second one that was shown off at San Diego Comic-Con and released at the PulseCon as an exclusive. And that is the STAP with a battle droid. And for me, this was my jam. I had that sneak peek figure that came out in 1998. I remember being at KB Toys and buying it and thinking that this was the coolest thing ever. We were finally getting a new Star Wars movie and a new figure from that new movie. This was my first new prequels figure. So referencing that release specifically with this, it got me. I couldn't not. As soon as we got the speeder bike all the way back in 2014, the STAP was high on my list of wants. I knew that it would be perfect for this line. It's small, it's a single figure vehicle, and it wouldn't be too expensive or big. And while I don't love The Phantom Menace as a movie, I have to admit it's a cool design. It's like a speeder bike and a Segway had some unholy abomination baby and they put guns on it. Now, the one thing I didn't need here was another battle droid. I'm largely trying to ignore this, not only because I have a much more extensive review of this figure on my channel, but this is also the 4th time we've gotten a battle droid figure this year. And since I'm doing a video on every figure I've gotten this year, I've talked about battle droids now 4th time, 4 times. 4th times? 4 times. That's how I'll say it. I mean, it's a standard battle droid with the standard paint job and all the same standard accessories. Blaster, backpack, blaster fits into backpack, alternate antenna backpack, folds up, constantly falls over. All the hits are here. If I could have changed one thing about this release, it would be that it would just be the STAP. I understand why they put the battle droid on there because it wouldn't mirror that first release without it. If they had just released just the STAP without the figure, I would have bought so many more of these. It would have been less expensive, first of all, but also you'd have extras for your Anakin Skywalker and Mace Windu, and I wouldn't have even more battle droids just hanging on my shelves. I'd give them something to do. They wouldn't fall over as much. I'd just use the ones I had. I mean, seriously, how many collectors out there don't have multiple battle droids in their collection already? Let me know in the comments if you don't. And it's not just that figures like Anakin Skywalker or Mace Windu would look good on it. Other figures would look good on it, like from the Cosmic Legions. I mean, it's kind of cool to have them here. I think it looks neat. The sky is the limit for how well sci-fi figures work on vehicles like this. Although I tried it with the Bloodfin, and it just sort of reminded me of that episode where Philip J. Fry was on the Scooty Puff Jr., and maybe it is a little undersized now that I think about it. No, it's just that Cosmic Legions are bigger than Black Series. That's it. Anyways, the STAP itself is nearly perfect. The dome top, the jets, the handlebars, all sculpted with so much detail. The paint job is great from top to bottom. The color is amazing. I even love that the brake handles are painted. Are they brakes? I mean, how does that even work? The blasters have carbon scoring on the ends of them. It's got a cool racing stripe down the side, and it actually has articulation at the top that goes not only side to side, but up and down. The only real downside to this release is that without the rubber bands it came with holding the battle droid on, the battle droid does tend to fall off unless you make sure it's super secure. But that's not a STAP problem. That's a battle droid problem. It also doesn't come with much. It has a stand, which mostly works great. It has a ball joint for articulation, so you can tilt it. And since it's so tall, it does tend to fall over. On my podcast, I believe it was my friend Ken Plume who actually suggested attaching a weight on the bottom to keep it anchored down. So I think that's a good suggestion if you're having trouble with it toppling over. But the one thing I really do wish that it came with are blaster effects for those blasters. Again, it looks cool, but it also looks a little plain, especially if you're posting it in a battle scene. So the stamp retailed for $50, and it did initially sell out, but it went back up for pre-order soon after, and then it never sold out again after that. I think $50 is reasonable for this, especially if you remove the battle droid from that price. $25 for the figure, $25 for the vehicle. This thing is small enough that I bet they could have put it in a deluxe box with blast effects and a stand, and then they could have charged deluxe prices for it, and I would have bought it. As it is, I bought 2 of these because it just seems like the appropriate number, you know, if you want to do some fun displays with it. It's entirely too early for me to tell right now if these were popular enough for Hasbro to give us more like it. But Hasbro, if you're watching this, please, more. Even if it's not large vehicles, Star Wars is full of smaller vehicles, from the prequels to the Clone Wars and Rebels to video games and beyond. I can't promise they'll sell well. In fact, history would seem to suggest that they won't. But I'll buy them if you make them, if that means anything to you. So what do you think? How many of these guys did you buy? Did you buy them for full price, or did you wait for a discount? And by these guys, I mean the whole list. I really want to know. I love to read and respond to comments when I can. But the real big question that I want to ask you is, if you did buy them on discount, would you have then gone back and paid full price for them? Like, did you think that it was worth the full asking price after you got your hands on it? I'm super curious about that. Also, tell me what vehicles you'd like to see, or would you not want to see any more vehicles in the line? Seriously. And that's my video. I want to specifically thank these people whose names are appearing on screen for supporting me as channel members. If you want to see your name on this list, please click the join button. If not, liking, sharing, and subscribing is a very free way that still helps out the channel. I hope that you found this video informative and at least a little bit entertaining, because I genuinely was going for that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for getting this far, and I'll see you later. Bye.